The envelope was sitting on my kitchen table when I got home from my Tuesday morning aquafit class. I almost didn't notice it. I'd set my gym bag down, poured myself a glass of water, and was halfway through checking the weather on my phone before I saw it propped against the fruit bowl. A plain white envelope with my name on it. Hand-delivered, no stamp. My daughter-in-law's in good news. I knew it wasn't good news. Colleen doesn't hand-deliver things unless she's thought very carefully about the presentation. I set my water glass down and opened it. Inside was a brochure. Glossy, 4 pages, full of photos of smiling older women doing watercolor painting and eating in what looked like a hotel dining room. Harmony Ridge Retirement Village. Redefine your best years. On the back, someone had circled a phone number with a red pen and written, "We already spoke with an intake coordinator. They have a suite available." Love you, Mom. I sat with that for a long time. I want you to understand something. I am 67 years old. I still shovel my own driveway. I grow tomatoes every summer. I drove from Halifax to Montreal by myself last September because I wanted to see the leaves. I am not confused. I am not a burden. I am not ready to hand my life over to anyone, and I had done nothing, absolutely nothing, to suggest otherwise. But here was this brochure on my table, and "Love you, Mom," written at the bottom as though it canceled out everything else. My son's name is Owen. He married Colleen 11 years ago, and for most of that time we've gotten along fine. Fine is the right word. She's efficient and organized and treats everything like a project, including, apparently, me. I sat at that kitchen table in my damp aquafit clothes and read the brochure cover to cover. Twice. Then I made myself a cup of tea, and I did something I hadn't done in a while. I called my daughter. Fiona lives in Victoria. She's my younger one, my quieter one, the one who checks in with a voice message every Sunday without fail. I told her about the brochure. There was a long pause. "Mom," she said, "did Owen say anything to you before this?" He hadn't. Not a word. I should back up a little, because none of this came out of nowhere. 18 months ago, Owen and Colleen bought a house. A beautiful house, 4 bedrooms, double garage, backing onto a ravine in a suburb about 40 minutes outside Halifax. More house than 2 people need, honestly, but Owen had just made partner at his firm, and Colleen wanted the kind of home she could decorate properly. I understood that. I didn't say anything. What I didn't know at the time was how they'd financed it. The mortgage alone was well over what I'd have been comfortable carrying, and they'd stretched to the upper limit of what the bank approved them for. Then, interest rates did what interest rates did over the past couple of years. Their renewal came up in the spring. The numbers got harder. I still didn't know any of this because Owen didn't tell me. What he did instead, apparently, was have a series of conversations with Colleen about the long-term picture. The long-term picture, as they'd drawn it for themselves, included the fact that I owned my home outright. A 3-bedroom Cape Cod in a nice part of Dartmouth that my husband Walter and I bought in 1989 for 1/10 of what it would sell for now. Walter passed away 6 years ago. The house is mine. It's been mine, free and clear, for 15 years. They'd done the math. Of course they had. Colleen is very good at math, and so somewhere between their mortgage renewal stress and a Sunday dinner where I mentioned I'd been a bit tired lately. I'd had a cold, nothing more. They decided I needed to be transitioned into assisted living. That's the word they'd use later. Transitioned. I found all of this out gradually, in pieces. But the first piece was the brochure. And the second piece was a phone call from Owen the day after I found it. He called at 7 in the evening, which is when he calls when he's rehearsed what he wants to say. "Mom, did you get Colleen's letter?" I told him I had. "We've been thinking about this for a while," he said. "We're not trying to push you anywhere you don't want to go. We worry about you rattling around that house alone." Rattling around. My house has 900 square feet. There is no rattling. "I'm fine, Owen. You said you were tired. I had a cold. You've seemed a bit off lately. Last time I was over, you couldn't remember the name of that restaurant we used to go to on Quinpool." "I couldn't remember the name in the moment," I said. "I remembered it 10 minutes later. That is called being 67, not dementia." He didn't say the word dementia. He was careful not to. but it was sitting right there in the room between us. "We just think it's worth a conversation," he said. "Harmony Ridge has a waiting list. We didn't want you to miss the window." A waiting list. They'd already called. Without speaking to me first, without so much as asking whether I'd given any thought to my own future, they had called a retirement residence and had a conversation with an intake coordinator about my life. "I'll think about it," I said, and I got off the phone. I didn't sleep that night. Not much. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to things I'd let slide. Not because I thought they were right. I knew they weren't right. But if something was happening here, if my own son had decided I needed managing, I wanted to understand the full shape of it. I called my financial advisor, a woman named Patricia who I've worked with for 12 years. She pulled up my accounts and we went through everything together. My pension, my RRSPs, my TFSA, the equity in the house. I was in better shape than I'd realized, honestly. Walter had been careful, and I'd been careful after him. Patricia told me I could retire on what I had indefinitely, more or less. I did not need to sell my house. I also called my doctor and asked her to run a full cognitive assessment. Not because Owen had rattled me. Well, not only because of that, but because I wanted documentation. I wanted a piece of paper that said, in clinical language, that I was fine. She looked at me a little sideways when I explained why I wanted it. "Your cognition is not something I've ever had any concern about," she said. "I know that," I said, "but I'd like it on record." She ran the assessment. I passed everything. She gave me a copy of the results to keep. I put it in a folder. I was starting a folder. Meanwhile, Owen called every week. Sometimes Colleen called too. They were very gentle about it, very measured. They never said anything unkind. They spoke about my quality of life and my social opportunities and the peace of mind they would feel knowing I was somewhere with resorts in place. They talked about me the way you talk about a problem you've already decided how to solve. Then, in early October, my daughter Fiona flew in from Victoria. She didn't tell Owen she was coming. She came straight to me. We sat in my kitchen, and she told me what she knew. She'd gotten a call from Owen in August. He'd told her that I was struggling, that I'd had some concerning episodes, that he thought the family needed to get aligned on a plan. He'd asked Fiona to support him when he brought it up with me. Fiona said she'd told him she wanted to talk to me first. He'd said, "You'll just upset her." Fiona looked at me across the kitchen table. "Has there been anything? Any episodes?" "I had a cold," I said, "and I forgot the name of a restaurant." She was quiet for a moment. "Owen mentioned the house," she said carefully. I looked at her. "He said that if you moved to Harmony Ridge, the sale of the house could cover the fees. He said it works out for everyone." She paused. "I think what he meant was it works out for him. I want to be clear that I didn't do anything rash. I didn't call Owen and accuse him of anything. I didn't make scenes or send letters or post anything anywhere. I just thought. I made tea, and I walked my neighborhood, and I sat with my tomato plants in the last of the fall warmth, and I thought about what I actually knew versus what I suspected. What I knew, Owen and Colleen wanted me in a retirement home. They had called ahead. They believed or had convinced themselves that this was for my benefit, and it happened to solve a financial problem they had not told me about. What I suspected, this wasn't only about caring for me. Maybe it wasn't even mostly about caring for me. So I did a little research. I have a neighbor, Harriet, who worked in real estate law for 30 years before she retired. Over dinner one evening in November, I described the situation to her, not to ask for advice exactly, just to think out loud. She listened very carefully. "Has Owen ever had signing authority on any of your accounts?" she asked. He had, actually. I'd added him years ago, after Walter died, as a practical measure. Harriet set down her fork. "I'd have a talk with your bank," she said. I went to the bank the next morning. What I found there was not what I'd expected, and yet somehow, when I look back, I should have been less surprised. Owen hadn't done anything illegal, not quite. But over the previous 8 months, he had moved money between accounts in ways I hadn't authorized and hadn't noticed. Small amounts, repositioned, in a way that was technically within the scope of what a signing authority could do, but had been done without telling me, and in a pattern my bank manager described very carefully as unusual activity. He also, it emerged, had explored the process for applying to be appointed my legal decision-maker under Nova Scotia's Adult Capacity and Decision-Making Act. He'd called the provincial office. He hadn't filed anything, but he'd made inquiries. He wanted to know what it would take. I sat in that bank manager's office for a long time. Then I thanked her, took a copy of everything, added it to my folder, and went home and called Patricia. There's a coffee shop in downtown Dartmouth where Owen and I used to meet for breakfast when he was in university. Scrambled eggs on toast, terrible coffee, a window seat looking out onto the water. We went there 100 times. I suggested we meet there in mid-November. He came in looking relieved. I think he thought I'd come around. We ordered. We made small talk about the weather, about his work, about a bathroom renovation Colleen had started. He asked how I was feeling. I said I was feeling very well, thank you. Then I opened my bag and took out the folder. I set it on the table between us. I had printed everything neatly and labeled the tabs. The cognitive assessment from my doctor, the statement from Patricia summarizing my financial position, the bank records showing the account activity, the information about the adult capacity inquiry, the letter from my lawyer, because yes, I'd called a lawyer, a woman named Claire who works in elder law and whom Patricia had recommended, setting out my instructions for the changes I was making. I watched Owen's face change. "Mum." "Let me finish," I said. I kept my voice quiet. "People were eating breakfast 6 inches away from us. I've removed you as signing authorities on all of my accounts. I've reviewed and updated my power of attorney. Fiona is now my attorney for both property and personal care. That's in here too. Claire filed it last week. I wasn't trying to." "I know what you were doing, Owen," I said. "I've read everything. I understand the mortgage situation, I understand the renewal, and I understand why Harmony Ridge sounded like a tidy solution." He looked out the window. His jaw was tight. "The house isn't for sale," I said. "It will not be sold to pay for a retirement home I don't need. It will be left to whoever I choose to leave it to, in whatever proportion I decide, at whatever time I am no longer here." A long silence. "We were worried about you," he said, "but it sounded different now. Thinner." "I know you were," I said. "And I think some of that was real, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But, Owen, you looked into having me legally declared incapable. Without talking to me. That's not worry. That's something else." He didn't answer. I closed the folder and put it back in my bag. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm not cutting you off. You're my son and I love you, and that doesn't change. But you don't get to make decisions about my life. Not now. Not until I actually need someone to make them for me, and even then, it won't be decisions made behind my back." We sat there for a while. He had some of his eggs. I drank my terrible coffee. When we stood up to leave, he hugged me, and I let him. He cried a little, just briefly, and I patted his back. I felt something that was not quite forgiveness and not quite grief, but was somewhere between the two. Colleen called 2 days later. She was cooler. She wanted me to understand that they'd only ever had my best interests at heart. I let her talk. When she was done, I said, "I appreciate that, Colleen," and I meant it in the way that closes a conversation. Fiona stayed for 3 weeks and helped me with the garden cleanup before the first frost. We put the tomato cages away in the shed, and we made a big pot of sauce from the last of what was left in the freezer, and we sat up late talking about things that had nothing to do with any of this. She flew home in early December. Before she left, she said, "I'm glad you handled it the way you did. I don't know if I could have been that calm." I told her the calm was mostly strategy. Inside, I'd been furious for months. She laughed. I laughed too, for the first time in a while. I still go to Aquafit on Tuesdays. I still call Patricia every quarter to review my accounts. I still grow tomatoes every summer, and I still drive myself wherever I need to go. The folder sits in my desk drawer in a hanging file labeled Household Legal, and I hope I never need to take it out again. The brochure for Harmony Ridge went into the recycling bin the night I got it home from that breakfast meeting. The fruit bowl is still right where it's always been, and there is nothing sitting against it but a small card Fiona sent me for my birthday. A painting of the Pacific coast, bright water, a woman standing at the edge of it looking out. I keep it there on purpose. to remind myself of what I still am.